There's a type of coaching question that seems to be a favorite among newer coaches. And I don't have an issue with it per se, except when it's overused or applied perhaps in the wrong place in the coaching session. I'm talking about the scaling question. The scaling question is on a scale of 1 to 10 or on a scale of 1 to 5, insert what we're measuring. Let me give you an example by talking through the initial agreement of a coaching session. Person comes to the coaching session, would like to improve a relationship with their manager. The coachee says, I feel like my relationship with the manager isn't where I'd like it to be. I'd like to get some ideas in this coaching session for how to be more collaborative and successful with my manager. The coach says, all right, I understand you'd like to improve the relationship with your manager. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being it's completely a disaster, the worst possible working relationship you could have, and 10 being it's phenomenal, it's fantastic, it couldn't possibly be any better, where would you say you are now? The coachee says, I feel like I'm at a 6. All right. So you're at a 6. Where would you like it to be by the end of this coaching session? I'd like it to be an 8. Great. So we're at a 6 now. We'd like it to be an 8 by the end of the coaching session. Why is this the topic you're bringing in coaching today? And so on. And then we begin with the coaching. At some point later in the session, we're going to check in, right? At the beginning of the coaching session, you wanted to talk about the relationship with the manager, and you set an objective to find new ways to collaborate and strengthen the relationship. You characterized the relationship as a 6. You wanted it to be an 8. Where are we now? The coachee might then say, I feel like we're at a 7. Yeah, a solid 7 now. I'd still like to keep working on it. All right. What's the natural question that the coach is going to ask? What's a step you can take to get it to an 8? This is where I feel the scaling question loses some of its power in that it creates predictability in the coaching session. And if you do this regularly in your coaching sessions, you're going to find your coaching is largely predictable. We like to actually create some sense of mystery in our coaching sessions. We don't know where it's going to go, right? We as the coach don't know, and the person being coached also doesn't know. If we use the scaling question regularly, well, then the client does know where it's going to go. It's going to go closer to the high number. So be careful about overusing this question. Where it might be helpful is with someone who is analytical. They like measuring and being able to measure the success in a coaching session. So if a certain number is what we're targeting, then they may appreciate that and continue working towards that number. However, there may also be people who don't necessarily want to put a number onto their objective because it's subjective. What exactly is an 8 in terms of a relationship with a manager? How would you say that we've reached the 8? Like, what's the difference between a 7 and an 8? It starts becoming pretty difficult to define what these numbers actually stand for. And do they stand for the same thing in the coach's mind and in the coachee's mind? Hard to say, right? So I believe the scaling question inherently has limitations within it. Used when needing to bring in some sort of measurement of an objective at the beginning of the session, it could be useful. Where I've seen it used sometimes where it's not as useful is later in a coaching session to be brought up. At the beginning of our coaching session, you wanted to find ways to speak up more proactively in a meeting. Now that we're nearing the end of the coaching session, how would you rate our progress on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being we're all the way there? Introducing it later in the coaching session at the check-in, to me, feels a little awkward. We were not using the scale earlier, but now we're using the scale. And then the coach is going to ask, well, what's a step you can take to get it closer to the 5? So be careful about bringing it in later, as opposed to using it at the beginning and then using it at the check-in. And then again, perhaps towards the end if you're going to do a final check-in. The other thing to keep in mind about the scaling question is, what if they said, I feel like I'm at a 4? And then you decide as the coach, well, shouldn't we get it to a 5? So then you decide for the client, what's one small step you can take to get it to a 5? What about celebrating the 4 where they are? Maybe they're quite happy with that and would appreciate the celebration of success to get it to a 4, and talk about other aspects of their thought process, such as accountability or how they're going to feel about this relationship once they take the steps that they've already talked about. What's next for this relationship after they start collaborating more, etc., or what happens when they start to speak up more in meetings? What are the positive effects that are going to accrue to them? So there are other things to talk about rather than how are we going to get it to a 5. So be careful about that. I hope this consideration of ins and outs of using the scaling question has helped you to think about whether this is a question you want to use and when. As with all techniques, there are pros and cons, and any technique overdone creates too much predictability in a coaching session, which is generally not what we want to see happen. If you have your own thoughts about the use of this question, please place them in the comments below. I'd love to see your comments and I respond to all of them. You can also email me at michael@BAECexecutivecoach.com. If you've appreciated my deep dive into this one question and you feel that you could learn even more from me, of course, there are lots of videos here, but there's a great way to go much deeper with me, and that's to join the Center for Executive Coaching, where I serve as a faculty member. I lead online training classes most weeks of the year, and I run in-person seminars several times a year where you can get trained and certified as an executive coach in just 3.5 days. Joining the online program is less expensive and more drawn out, and that may suit your pace and budget better. So consider that, and I also lead mentor coaching groups several times a year. Learn more about our options by visiting BAECexecutivecoachtraining.com. And of course, you can schedule time with me there or email me at michael@BAECexecutivecoach.com with your questions about our program. The last thing I'll recommend is to follow my company page on LinkedIn. Search for Bay Area Executive Coach on LinkedIn. Follow that page to get posts each week to help you as a new or aspiring executive coach. Thank you very much.